Welcome, traveler. Get ready to level up in fantasy football. Join Mike and Evan and a special guest every week as we break down some of the most important topics in fantasy football, the NFL, and help you win dynasty championships. Let's get into it.
Well, hey there, hi there, ho there, everybody. My mic likes to stay muted for a little longer than necessary. This is episode 96 of the Fantasy Football RPG podcast. As always, I am one of your hosts, FF Mike Cash. You can find me on Twitter at FF Mike Cash with a K. And you can find Evan running the FFRPG pod account. Evan, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. How are you doing this evening? I know I've been getting in a lot of NCAA football. Have you?
I was going to say, we need to be really quick with this episode. I just won the Frisco Bowl as Coastal Carolina. We didn't get an invite to the national championship. I'm not mad about it. I'm just saying it's a 12-team playoff. We were ranked 16. I think there was some inner workings going on there. But for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see there's another human here. We are joined by Wyatt from JWB. Wyatt, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm having a great time.
What's new with the zoo with you?
It's the same thing. Full-time job, family, and then trying to make fantasy football content in all what little free time I have. But loving every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm a new dad. I heard that I get so much more time now that I have a kid to do just kind of all random write-ups and stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you actually get extra hours in the day somehow. I don't know how, but
it happens. Perfect. It's in between changing diapers that it just really sticks out to me. But who are you? What do you work on? And what are some things that people should check out?
Yeah, so co-owner of JWB Fantasy Football with my guy Skylar, the FF Buffalo on Twitter. And we're basically just trying to be we're an all-encompassing fantasy channel. We do Devy, Dynasty, Redraft, Best Ball. And one big thing for us is that we try to foster a real community. And we have a free Discord that has really grown. It's over almost 900 people strong now. And there's people in there talking every day about every format, and it's a really nice place because there's no hate going on there. That's something that we strive to work towards.
Yeah.
And that's just trying the vibe we try to bring forth with everything that we do. That it's kind of like a family feel. We're all here for love and playing fantasy football.
Yeah. I've been flirting with Jake, one of your writers on Twitter, for 2 years now, and I finally met him in person. Just as lovely as advertised. So
yeah, Jake's great.
So cool. All right, real quick before we get into our fantasy football nonsense, I want to give a quick shout out to Dubby. Listen, NCAA just dropped. Evan has already played 24 hours. He also worked a full day. Don't tell his employer. So when you're feeling sleepy at night, take some Jitter Sanity drink a little bit of Dubby. Use code FFRPG at checkout, and then eventually I won't have to record using a laptop in a weird hotel room, which would be cool. Same deal. Look, redraft season is ramping up. It's time to get excited. It's time to get fired up. There's no better way to get your league mates excited than to have a trophy. My family league has passed around a trophy for a couple of years. It rules. You sign the back, and then you pass it on to the next person. If you are going to buy a trophy, go to Trophy Smack. Use code FFRPG. Get a little money off, and we can buy Evan a better ring light. Any other shout-outs you want to give, Evan?
No, I think you hit on all the sponsors right now, Mike.
All right, sweet.
And now it's time for news and notes.
All right. In a tale as old as time, Vikings wide receivers don't know how to drive, so Addison has an alleged DWI. This is his second driving incident in 12 months. Wyatt, what would you buy Jordan Addison for in Dynasty?
I'd still send a late first pretty easily for Addison. I think the go-to for this for the league is 3 games. It might not happen this year because how close we are to the season. Basically, the way they've done this in the past is they wait for the legal system to play out, and then they'll come with their suspension, and that's normally been 3 games. Well, this might not finish up in the legal system before the season, so it might not happen until 2025. So if someone's panicking because of that, I think that's a good little buy window. Then I would say it might not even be anything. This isn't as far as I believe. Last thing we know is that he was found asleep in his car, correct?
Yep.
And I don't know if that's now. Don't get me wrong. This is bad, right? What happened was bad. It's probably not quite as bad as like he was speeding down the road, driving, and
It could be worse.
they like. I'm just trying to think about how his team will be able to handle this legally and what the NFL will do. And while like it can be pretty black and white for people on the outside to say like, yeah, this is really bad, but like if we're trying to think about what it means for him moving forward, we kind of have to think about how the league and his legal team will be able to handle this situation and all the intricacies of it. So I don't know. Like, I think it's possible like nothing happens, but like at worst, it's probably just gonna be a 3-game suspension. Might happen next year. Whatever. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not worried about the legal system. Like, it's going to take 3 weeks, like 6 weeks max, which in dynasty scheme, that's really nothing. I'm more worried about touchdown variance, rookie quarterback. Is the quarterback good? And a full healthy season of Justin Jefferson, like bigger real football concerns than actual off the field concerns. Evan, in a move that is hilarious, Jamal Adams has signed with the Tennessee Titans. The Titans don't know what they are. Like, they have one of the oldest rosters, but also one of the most weird rosters. Does this like move the needle for betting lines that we're going to talk about later, or you're just that's a blitz boy that's funny?
No, it's just a former Pro Bowler that has had injuries absolutely derail his career, and the Titans taking a chance because they need all the help they can get on defense.
Okay, well, let's talk about the fun things.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
All right, my mic keeps muting a little bit too long. So, first of all, thank you to Fantasy Calc. We are going to use some of their values that are from their site. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. Better than Keep Trade Cut, because they take real league interactions and then they use that to build their trade calculator instead of just, hey, who would you rather have? Which other sites do that, and I always just click through them. But we'll start fast and furious with, in a Superflex league, let's say, same constraints as last week. You're a ascending team, you're hoping to make the playoffs, but you didn't make the playoffs last year. You feel like your roster is ready to make the leap. Would you rather have Will Levis or the 111 in this year's draft, Wyatt?
Real quick, you said this year's draft, right?
Yes, sir.
Do I need a QB?
Let's say yes.
Yeah, I would.
So basically, Will Levis or Bo Nix?
Yeah, I would pay the 111 for Will Levis. I didn't think he was a very good prospect coming into the NFL. I thought that even though he wasn't very good in what we saw last year, it was probably better than what I expected for him, honestly. Like, I think like there's something for Anthony Richardson too, where it's like Anthony Richardson's not there as a passer yet, but like their composure in game leads me to believe like they could get there because like they're not shaken by the game. Neither of them looked like they were seeing ghosts or anything. They were in there doing their best. They made some bad decisions, maybe, not the most accurate passes, but they're not being shaken by the game. And I think that's a good thing for Will Levis. And the Titans have put all the things around him to try and give him the chance to be successful. And I think it's worth finding out for this. It's a big swing trade to go out and trade for Will Levis, because like go absolutely either way. This you're just like, lighting money on fire, or you've got a big win. I don't think there's really going to be any in between with Levis, but I think it's worth taking the risk at that pick.
Yeah, if he's bad for fantasy football, it probably means the Titans are also bad, which means they're drafting a quarterback next year. So, like, you could literally just burn this 111 alive, or play a little game with it, have some fun. Let's move to the favorites in the AFC South, if I remember correctly. Nico Collins of the Houston Texans, or the 106 plus a 2025 third, Evan.
Oh, man. I love those third-round picks, especially next year with such a deep running back class. So it's another dart throw. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the 106 and the 25 third. Do I think Nico Collins is very good at football? Yes. Do I think that the upside is a little bit capped? Sure. At least for this year. Do I think CJ Stroud's value is too high? Yes. Okay. Well, put all of that stuff together and we start having the 106, which if you're telling me that quarterback needy teams maybe push up extra quarterbacks and maybe I have an outside shot at a Neighbors, likely not. Maybe I have a chance at Odunze. Okay. Maybe I have a chance at Brock Bowers. Sure. I'll take Odunze and the third over Nico Collins.
I have a follow-up question with that. So let's say that it's Rome Odunze right there. The 25 third really, like, I know you love them, but it's really not moving the needle for most people. So you're just saying straight up you would rather have either Brock Bowers or Rome Odunze than Nico Collins?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking dynasty team, it's a young ascending team, fringe playoff team, kind of how we labeled it last year. I'm trying to stay with the majority of the roster. Yes, I get it. Nico Collins is young in his own right. But if you have a rookie quarterback that goes out and shows in Caleb Williams, and if Rome Odunze can get some kind of reasonable target share this year, I mean, it's going to be wheels up. People are going to go crazy because they saw what he did. They've seen all the reports. So sure, I'm gonna take the chance on the upside of Rome there.
Okay. Well, I am going to go through the leagues and see which ones you have Nico Collins in, and I will be sending you the 106 and a third. And last question of the day, we have Evan Ingram or the 202. I'll just go ahead and answer this one real quick. It's pretty healthily Evan Ingram to me. I mean, targets are earned. He's been a target earner his whole career. It's just the Daniel Jones experience hasn't been a fun one to ride. All of a sudden, he finds himself in a good offense, and would you look at that? He's the tight end 2 overall. Still young enough to be a contributor. Still like a great option in tight end leagues. Like, I just think there's a lot to love with Evan Ingram, and at the 202, you're not getting a tight end that can fill in there. Yes, tight end is deeper than it has been before, but if you're looking for a tight end, Evan Ingram is a great option. Any feedback on that?
Mike, you're the dad for Lad. Come on.
Oh, you're telling me I can get Lad McConkey at the 202?
Yeah, I don't know if you're getting Lad at 202 anymore.
Ooh. I went 108 in the last league that I drafted, which was wild.
This is probably closer to like Evan Ingram or Trey Benson or Keon Coleman. And honestly, I think that's team dependent. I'm not a Keon Coleman fan, but I mean, people who are, that's a decision they have. But that's like a team dependent thing to me. I think I could see going either way on that. I am an Evan Ingram fan. It's just like it's a player, like he just had an amazing season, right? He's never going up past this. like his value is just, this is where it is. You know what I mean? Yep. So if you wanted to take a bet on the younger asset that could accrue value and be worth more than him, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. If you told me that my team is not ready to compete until 2025, yes, give me Trey Benson. I'll just put him in a locker and wait until next season. If I'm trying to make the push in 2024, I think it's Ingram with a bullet.
I can understand.
All right. Let's start deep dive in some of these teams. So Evan has taken the time to list every transaction that the world has ever seen. We'll start with the daddies of the AFC South, the Houston Texans. So they went ahead and they traded for Stefan Diggs, who is now on his 3rd team, which is hilarious. They also traded for Ben Skowronek. Don't forget about that. That's some important news. They traded and extended Joe Mixon. They upgraded their offensive line a little bit. They drafted Cade Stover, who is a very good blocker. They drafted some running back depth, extended all of their key weapons, and then they lost Devin Singletary and Rex Burkhead. Shoot. Dang it. Now, the big news here is that they kept Bobby Slovic in the building. Being able to maintain the system that they already saw so much success with is very good for a young quarterback's development. So going through the pieces here, we already talked a little bit about Nico Collins. Why I would love to get a heat check on you on Tank Dell. Like in redraft this year, is he the wide receiver 3 on this team? Is he the wide receiver 2? Is he going in a place that you're okay throwing darts at it? Like, tell me how you feel about Tank Dell.
He's the wide receiver 3 for me, projecting for 2024. I think it's pretty easy to do that. I do think it will be like fairly close between all 3 of them, but I do think that Tank Dell is 3rd in the pecking order. So it's a really interesting dynamic between those 3, and it's something that like it's going to continue to be like one of the biggest talking points until the season starts, so we get to see what's really happening. But you've got like Nico Collins, pure alpha size athleticism, and has the breakout season with all the advanced metrics you could want. You look up and they're all fantastic, right? Yeah. Signs this extension, so it looks like I think it's pretty easy to peg him as like he's the number 1 wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Then they bring in Stefan Diggs, who has all this history. I think at least to start the season, until we see a reason that it's not going to be the case, he's going to be right there with Nico. He's been a target earner for a long time now. I expect that to be the case. I think he might play more slot for the Texans. That wouldn't surprise me at all, actually, because Tank Dell, despite his size, was really good on the outside. And I think that's what's going to happen a lot is Tank Dell is going to be working on the outside a lot, doing a lot of deep routes because they worked Nico Collins a lot on these shorter and intermediate routes, trying to get the ball in his hands quickly because he turned out to be really good after the catch. That was like one of the new wrinkles that like Bobby Slowick figured out that helped Nico Collins break out was that it turns out he's like really good with the ball in his hands.
Who knew?
Yes, and because I think Tank Dell can be doing that, I think he is going to see a little bit less of the work, but I think he's going to be really efficient on that. So like, I want all these guys. Like I really do think this offense could absolutely explode, and I think they could all be really valuable. They're all basically like close to top 24 wide receivers for me in Dynasty and in redraft, like pretty close. I think like I have Stefan Diggs just outside of that because of age in Dynasty, but like I think you should be excited for all of them. And I'm not like going to give up on Tank Dell just because of these moves. I don't expect Stefan Diggs to be there more than this 1 year. You know, they did that restructure for him to be there for the 1 year. And I'm assuming he did that because he wants to try and get a new contract afterwards. And I can't imagine the Texans doing that when they have to think about all the homegrown talent they have to figure out when they need to pay. So like this might be not quite the second season we thought it was going to be for Tank Dell based on what he was doing as a rookie before he got hurt. But like, I think it'd still be a good year. And then the future is very bright.
Yeah, completely fair with Tank. It's tough for me to look at this offense. Like of quarterbacks that have been able to support 3 top 36 options, it's been Joe Burrow. And I can't name another one. So like, it's been a minute since the last one has happened. So when we start talking about like who is going to eat in this offense, really, people are going to have to choose 2 or 3 that they're excited about. And if you're in at all 3, they're all going at a like palatable place. But there's just too many of the same players from the same offenses, talking about the Chicago Bears where they have 3 receivers going in the top 40 right now. Like we just need to maybe tamper expectations on the other offense, but then still be in on this one. Evan, I would love to ask you, because you are the noted running back hater. You hate them with your passion. Joe Mixon, he got most of his like fantasy goodness out of just volume. Is that going to continue in Houston? Like they kind of gave up enough assets that it seems like that should be the case. But I mean, Dameon Pierce isn't a slouch. Allegedly, he has another year to acclimate to the system. Like, is this going to be another Joe Mixon plotter year, or should we be worried about him for fantasy football?
Yeah, no, I very much think Joe Mixon's still a plotter. He's exactly what he's been these last couple of years. Going to be looking at, 3.5 to 4, maybe on the bright side, yards per attempt. And it's going to be rough to watch, but he's going to continue to keep them on schedule, going to continue to keep them ahead of the chains. As he does, he loves to fall forward, always a trait that people love out of running backs. And he's there for the times where CJ just needs to take a breath before he continues to chuck the ball for another 5-6 downs.
Mixon loves to get 3.34 yards per carry so they get a first down and he can move on with his life. Like that's his dream, is just to get exactly enough that they can run the ball 3 times. Wyatt, do you have different thoughts about Mixon? Like, are you excited about the change of scenery, or he's going to be the Mixon he's been for 6 years?
I think it's just more Mixon. Like I definitely think he's not going to be efficient all of a sudden. Like he is what he is. I've never seen someone come in the NFL with like so much size and athleticism and not know how to use it whatsoever. And once he got to the NFL, because like Joe Mixon was like this really athletic prospect, right? And he's never looked like it in the NFL. But anyways, he just consolidates touches, and I don't see why he wouldn't continue to do that with the Texans. Dameon Pierce does not fit what they want to do. He was losing snaps to Dare Ogunbowale last year. Like he ain't it. Oof. I think we know. Yes. So it's not going to be pretty, but Mixon's just going to continue to like probably put up a low end wide running back one season on ugly touches. But we shouldn't care that they're ugly. Like at the end of the day, just like look at the fantasy points in your weekly lineup, and that's all you should care about with Mixon. So yeah, I'm excited in the way that like I think he'll help my fantasy teams. I'm never excited to watch him play though.
Yep, it's gonna be very strange every time that they snap the ball and it's a pass. We're like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever. And they snap the ball and hand it to Joe Mixon. We're gonna be like, that was gross. Please stop doing that. Yeah. All right. Any Ben Skowronek love, or you guys want to talk more about CJ Stroud? Listen, he popped all the way up to Dynasty QB2. I even think he flirted with Dynasty QB1 for a little bit in the offseason as the youth hype caught on.
Oh, he did.
Wyatt, Evan and I are in agreement that he's overvalued. What would you be willing to sell him for, or do you think he is overvalued?
I think he is overvalued slightly. He's my QB4, so like I still have him up really high.
Yeah.
Like I have him in a tier with Lamar, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray together. Basically, like the way I like to approach like that tier of QBs is if you want to pay me a plus to move between those, sure, I'll just do whatever. Like if someone wants to buy my CJ Stroud for Kyler Murray and they want to add on something significant to it, you can have CJ Stroud from me. You know, I just don't care.
Yeah.
If someone likes Lamar more than CJ Stroud and I can get CJ Stroud off them for my Lamar with something on top of Stroud, I'm doing it. I'm really, the thing that Stroud has going for him at this point now is like, we're very confident he's one of the best QBs in the league. Like very confident. He's obviously very good. He might only be like a 19 point per game quarterback for his career.
Yep.
But you could just lock that in, you know, and there's value in that.
Yeah. I think that he's one of those guys that in redraft, especially, he's going to continue to just be overvalued because it's just like Texans are good. CJ Stroud is good. Therefore, they should be good at fantasy. But like pocket passer with 0 rushing upside, it's hard for him to pay off at his price. He could go out and have a 5,140 touchdown season. That's very like in his range of outcomes. But also there's going to be some years where he doesn't, and it's going to make us sad. So yeah, I love the idea of just moving within the tier, getting a plus on top. If somebody wanted to grab your CJ Stroud, they have Kyler. How much of a plus are we talking to move? Like, is it just a second? Is it a first? Is it a sizable player that you can put in your flex? Like, throw some names out there or some values.
At the risk of like league mates trying to, you know, hold me to this, like I probably would do it for just a second on top, just because I feel that strongly about Kyler Murray. Like that, that's what that is a vote of confidence in Kyler. But if I'm in actual negotiations, I'm probably going to try and get a first worth of value, whether is just a raw pick or if it's a player that I value approximately equal to a first, just because I think that's what you should be able to get according to the market.
Yeah, that's completely fair. And I think Evan and I are in agreement with that. So that rules. That is enough on the Houston Texans for now until we talk about their win totals later. Let's talk about a strange team. A lot of these are strange teams, actually. The Jacksonville Jaguars. So they traded for Mac Jones, which is a choice. They signed Gabe Davis. They signed Mitch Morse. They signed Devin Duvernay, the kick return specialist. Joseph DeGuara, like just a bunch of like random weapons that are like auxiliary pieces. And then they went out and they drafted big, speedy, sexy Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I want to talk a little bit about that after we go through the rest of these. So they extended Trevor Lawrence to $1 billion. They extended Ezra Cleveland to $1 billion. They lost Calvin Ridley, who had 100 dropped touchdowns last year, and they got rid of Zay Jones. They replaced their defensive coordinator in the hopes to be a little more relevant. But let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. and his dynasty value right now. He's floating somewhere between the 107 and 109 in your rookie drafts right now. How would you guys rank the tier of Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, and Jonathan Brooks? Evan, we'll start with you.
You're going to go to the guy that's going to throw slander on Brian Thomas Jr. right off the rip. Okay.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go with Jonathan Brooks, then Ladd McConkey, then I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr., mainly because, unlike Eric, former co-host, he loves himself some Trevor Lawrence, and I have significant doubts with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's continually overhyped for what he produces from a fantasy standpoint. I think he's continuously overvalued because he was the former number 1 overall pick, because of everything that he did at Clemson, because of everything that he did in high school, even before that. So Lawrence, to me, is just a mid NFL quarterback, which, don't get me wrong, that's still one of the top 15, right around 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, which is an absolute feat inside of itself. But you still have Christian Kirk, you still have Evan Ingram, you still have Travis Etienne, who's taken strides as a receiving back. You still have Gabe Davis and his 4, maybe 5 games a year. that he ends up putting up massive numbers that you're like, oh, cool. I really love having Gabe Davis. And then he puts up a 0 the very next week, and you're like, why did I ever start him? So all of that to be said, Brian Thomas Jr. seems like a future pick, whereas Jonathan Brooks could potentially be a playoff pick if I'm taking him this year, looking for a guy that's going to be coming into his own in the second half of the season. Ladd McConkey, Ladd's a tough one because of the fact that I still think him and Palmer are going to be absolutely neck and neck for targets this year. I think it's going to be pretty dang close to a split. But love the upside, love the PPR upside of Ladd. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love how different Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas Jr. are as prospects. Like, one is just size, speed, touchdowns, 1 year wonder. The other one, we're just like, yeah, we watched the film. He's really good at separating. That's about it. Wyatt, would you rank those players differently? And if so, why?
Brooks, big tier gap. And then, I would say Thomas / McConkey, because like I literally have them back to back in my rankings. But I would have Thomas ahead, mostly because I think the theoretical ceiling is higher for him than it is for McConkey. But McConkey, I think, is a much safer bet than Thomas, though. Like Thomas could, he could be nothing. He could be Quentin Johnston. That shouldn't be a surprise. I think if that happens, I think he's a significantly better prospect than Quentin Johnston. I'm just saying, like, these big, fast, like down the field receivers. Well, even though Quentin Johnston really wasn't that big of a downfield receiver, he should have been closer to the line of scrimmage. But that's another thing. That was how he was used, anyways. Yep. But the point is, like, those types of players can have this really range of outcomes, and I think he's good, and I think that he can reach, a good outcome for his profile. But you do have to recognize that the ceiling, I think, is lower for him. Whereas Ladd McConkey, we know he's a good route runner and can separate, and he's going to be playing on the slot. We just know he's going to get open, right? And because he has less competition around him, like we can pretty much guarantee enough targets as a rookie that like he's not going to miss unless like he is just straight up bad, like nobody saw it coming. Which I just don't think, like, that's not something I'm going to bet on. So yeah, those are really close. But if I had to pick between Thomas and McConkey, I would pick Thomas just for the ceiling.
Yep. I agree. I think it's Brooks, then the other two. But I think what's interesting with Brian Thomas Jr., this isn't a play style comp, although it is kind of similar. Isn't it kind of funny that the Jags went out and signed Gabe Davis, and then they just drafted faster Gabe Davis?
This is something that I think is super interesting every year, and I try to talk about it often, that the way the NFL has their season, like their year-long schedule, makes it very interesting for the free agency and NFL draft. The free agency being before the NFL draft causes teams to make these moves because they don't know what's going to be available for them in the NFL draft. It's very possible the Jags went, we want to make sure we can find someone who can play our X and just eat up coverage. And we don't know what's available for us in the draft. So let's sign Gabe Davis. We thought Calvin Ridley might be able to do it. He wasn't used that well for that. He should not be put in that role. Let's get Gabe Davis. He can do that. And then the draft comes around. They're like, Brian Thomas is here. We can't pass up Brian Thomas. So it does create an interesting dynamic. We see stuff like that happen every year, and it's always really interesting to try and parse through.
And now we're going to watch Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis fight for those snaps just so that they can clear out room for Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk.
Yes.
All right. Any other? Let's talk a little bit. So we talked about how Trevor Lawrence is overrated in Evan's opinion. I think that he's, whatever rated. He's somewhere in that tier of like, you feel good with him as your quarterback in Superflex, but like he's not a quarterback one, locked and loaded. Do you feel differently about that, Wyatt, or just? No,
that's basically how I feel. I've been like slightly below market on Trevor Lawrence the last couple of years, basically. What you just said, I think, is a perfect way to say it. Like, you got a long-term quarterback. He's going to score some points, but like he's not quite where you want him to be.
He has a job, which quarterback with a job, that's a win. Okay, and then Travis Etienne was touted as one of the best receiving backs in the league, came into the league, and then we decided to not use him as a route runner at all, which is hilarious. They were like, look, he can line up out wide. Anyway, we're going to hand it to him 30 times a game. Evan, what would you buy Travis Etienne for in Dynasty, and where are you drafting him in redraft? Oh, yeah, I'm putting you on the spot tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Dynasty. I don't even know where's Fantasy Calc when you need it.
Here, let's do it this
can
way. Would you rather have Travis Etienne or Jonathan Brooks in Dynasty?
ETN.
Okay. So then I'm assuming you wouldn't have him over like the Bowers Adunze tier. So you'd be willing to offer like the 108 and you'd be willing to sell him for the 107.
Sure.
Look at that. Fantasy. Are you confident with him as your RB1 if you're playing redraft this year?
Confident? No. Comfortable? Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's a fair way of putting it. The offensive line still leaves a lot to be desired in Jacksonville. Definitely a concern. I love looking at my offensive lines, and it's questionable, especially adding pass catchers, giving Lawrence the extension. They're gonna want to test out their new toy, and also be able to get their money out of Lawrence.
Okay. Wyatt, I'm not going to ask you the same question because I want to get your thoughts on Christian Kirk. Hurt his groin last year. He was a target earning machine ahead of time. Now, we were just talking about how they're going to clear out room so that he can work a little bit more from the slot. Like, what are you willing to buy him for in Dynasty, and do you think he's undervalued in redraft? The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. He has been, What I would buy him in for Dynasty, considering the market, an early second sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have him ranked ahead of the wide receivers you would be drafting in the early second anyways. So pretty confident there. Like, I think if you see, this is where this gets interesting because it's like, to me, he's actually worth late first, but I don't think I should ever have to send the late first to do it, because if you're going to start sending the late first, you can go higher up the ranks, if it could do late, an early second for him straight up is great. If someone wants you to add on something negligible on top of that, sure, whatever. Don't really care.
Just a little sprinkle of noise to get.
Yeah, you want a sprinkle? I'll give it to you.
Doesn't it feel like he's in that Amari Cooper range as well, where you're like, I could give a first, but I want to give that early second, but I know you really don't want to take that early second. So let's just go on a 2-year down the road third. Just make you happy. Here you go.
Yeah, you got to get sneaky with those trades because, like, I think everybody starts to realize that, right? So, like, you have to be like you could try tiering down to them, I think, and like that's how you can try and get away with it. Like, I don't know, send Deebo Samuel for Christian Kirk in a second, and like, I don't know, is their points per game going to be that different this year? I don't know.
If Ayuk goes away, which we forgot to cover this earlier, Ayuk requested a trade. The 49ers, last 3 players that have requested a trade signed an extension the same year. So, fun fact. All right.
That one isn't. If it can just real quick, that one is interesting though, just because like how public it's been. Like, I don't know how many of those have been this public as Brandon Ayuk. Not that means like anything's going to be different from the norm. I think he's going to play for the 49ers. He has no leverage whatsoever. They're in a Super Bowl window. Like, they want him to play, and they have no reason to trade him. Like, somebody would have to really like give them a Godfather offer to trade him away. They need him for their Super Bowl run. So like, I don't see him actually going anywhere.
Well, and he's asking to be traded to the Commanders because he wants to play with Jim Daniels. Like, I mean,
which is not that good for us.
What kind of leverage does he have?
It's not good for him either. Why would you?
It's not good for Terry. It's not good for Terry McLaurin. It's not good for that offense.
I tweeted about that recently, actually, because like, since that was a hypothetical, and like the way it came out was basically like, it's probably not good for him. There's probably like some extra volume, but the efficiency is definitely going to drop. But I probably wouldn't feel all that differently about my rankings because you have to weigh in what if Jaden Daniels is really good. And if that's the case, and he's just like comes in there and he's the alpha, well, maybe everything's like hunky dory. But yeah, just like on the surface though, it doesn't seem very good if he went to Washington.
Yeah, nothing like going from a Kyle Shanahan offense, which is like hyper efficient, full of touchdowns, to a rookie quarterback in a tough division. Like, that doesn't sound
with Cliff Kingsbury, who when he got DeAndre Hopkins said, you were playing on the left side of the field on the line, and you're not moving from that spot. You're running all your routes from there. No creativity with him.
Nope. Oh, man. All right, we got to speed run the Colts real quick so we can get back on schedule. They added an elite backup quarterback in Joe Flacco. They extended Michael Pittman. They drafted A.D. Mitchell, drafted some offensive line help, and then they lost the other elite backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew. lost Zach Moss, which if that like moves you, that's fine. They also added Trey Sermon in an interesting move. Let's real quick. Who is the wide receiver 2 in Indianapolis, Wyatt?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I'm going to bet on one for my dynasty rosters, it's Adonai Mitchell, just because, again, the theoretical ceiling compared to Josh Downs, but like should not be a surprise if Josh Downs has a better year than Adonai Mitchell or career.
Josh Downs had over 10 points per game until he hurt his ankle, and then
he was having a very good rookie year before the injury. If he didn't actually just play through it, like if he actually just sat for a few weeks and then came back,
we'd be more interested.
Oh yeah, like people that rookie season looks a lot different. People would be more excited for Downs if it wasn't for that.
It also looks a lot different if they don't take AD Mitchell. Like that's kind of like teams make moves that concern me a little bit. Evan, I can see you fuming from the ears.
Well, it also would look a lot better or look a lot worse if you start thinking, oh, Alec Pierce is actually good at football, which he's horrendous at football. So now you put AD Mitchell in that spot. So theoretically, you look at a team that is going to have at least some production from whether it's their wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, whichever one AD is, which is going to pull down Josh Downs. Pittman's the clear number 1. So now we're fighting over the 3rd, maybe 4th potential option. What would it be? Quick pass to Michael Pittman, hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. Oh, play action, bootleg, Anthony Richardson runs, then look for Downs? I mean,
you saying you don't want to fight over the 800 yards that are left on the table after you account for everyone else?
Exactly.
That doesn't excite you? Weird.
No.
All right, cool. So that's wide receiver 2 question. I also want to ask, is Anthony Richardson good at football? I cannot be unbiased here. I love him. Evan, I think you vote yes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely love him. Before when we were talking about CJ Stroud, I was going to say I will take Anthony Richardson and a 3rd for CJ Stroud.
For fantasy football, I love that. Team building, different. Fantasy football,
Sure.
Hell yeah. Wyatt, is Anthony Richardson good at football? Tell me no, because I'm in an echo chamber of love.
I like the way this is phrased because, yes, he's good at football. Is he good at playing QB? I don't know yet. But he's certainly good at football. Okay? When I was talking about Will Levis before, like he's obviously not shaken on the football field, and that's good for him. So I think like he's going to get there, but as a passer, I mean, there's lots of work to do.
I'm going to hold my tongue. I think that he is way, way better at passing the ball than anybody gave him credit for. Florida was just silly because it's Florida.
I think he was way better than he was coming into the NFL too, or at least the way he was seen. He's still got a while to go.
Yep. All right. And then last but not least, this is the most fun question, and it's not on the show notes anywhere, so sorry to put both of you on the spot. Who is the tight end of the Indianapolis Colts? Anybody?
Jelani Woods. I'll die on that. I'll die on that hill. Score monster.
Yeah, if I have to make the bet, it's Jelani Woods.
Nice. What's interesting to me is that Jelani Woods is going off the board earlier in redraft than he is in Dynasty, despite being young, tied to an ascending offense, and allegedly good at football. We just haven't seen him play that much. So if you're looking for a market inefficiency, there's a fun one to exploit. And we sped run the Colts because I want to hammer in on the Tennessee Titans because I don't know what to do with this team. They added Calvin Ridley. They added Tyler Boyd. They added Mason Rudolph, which Will Levis, watch your back. They added Tony Pollard, who's like Tyjae Spears but old. They added Lloyd Cushenberry at center. They added some other offensive line help. They went ahead and they drafted Jaquan Jackson, if that interests you at all. They also drafted J.C. Latham, which is probably important. They moved on from the Yeti himself, Derrick Henry, lost Andre Dillard, and then they moved on from some other silly stuff. Now their entire coaching staff just disappeared, and now we have Brian Callahan, the old OC of the Cincinnati Bengals. What is this offense going to look like? We've seen them run the ball 700 times and pass twice. Evan, what is the rushing passing split for this team going to look like? I ask because you're building the Titans stadium with your hands.
57-43. If I'm going to throw out numbers, that's my estimation on it. I think they're still going to run the ball, especially taking as much time and effort to be able to build that running back core, going after Tony Pollard. as well, being able to upgrade that offensive line. I mean, Cushenberry is the signing of the offseason for this team. People are going to say it's Ridley, but Cushenberry 100% is the center that is going to help.
This is Tyler Boyd erasure.
Whatever. Is going to help this offensive line run efficiently for at least half of the offensive line. It's looking like Latham is going to be pushed over to left tackle, most likely. So now you have a left side of the offensive line that has 2 former top 10 picks. You have Cushenberry, who is probably a top 10 center in the league. So you have half of an offensive line. What don't you have is the right side of the offensive line. And all we know is Chigakonkwo, sure as crap, is not blocking. He is not built to block. He is built to be off the line and to be running routes as the receiving tight end. What does that mean? Josh Wiley, maybe, is going to be seeing a little bit more blocking time. Chig's time goes down a little bit to be able to utilize these fancy offensive weapons in DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard out of the backfield, Tajay Spears that everybody seems to be down on, and Calvin Ridley. I mean, what a great skill position group there. I'd love to play quarterback for that team.
I love that you talk about the weapons because I'm going to ask Wyatt some just either or questions off the top of the head. Take cost out of it. Just who is the better fantasy football player this year? Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins?
Hopkins. I knew it was coming. Hopkins.
Yep. Who is the better fantasy football asset this year? Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears?
Ooh, gonna ruffle some feathers. I'm gonna say Pollard.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to have you. Oh shoot, we lost him.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen here. If I
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I think this is one of those things where everyone's super excited for the young player, and meanwhile, Tony Pollard is just one of those professional running backs who's going to do all the right things, and is just going to have the majority opportunity shared. Tony Pollard is he's Batman right now. He's lived long enough to become the villain because he's going to go from being that low touch, really efficient guy to being the higher touch, but he's losing the efficiency. And the guy behind him is the one that people are clamoring to get more touches. But I think Tajay Spears is best served similar to what he was last year. Used a lot in the passing game, still getting 5, 6, 7, 8 rushes a game. But I think that's where he thrives. I don't know if you want to be giving Tajay Spears too many more opportunities than that. And whereas you can allow Tony Pollard to soak up some of those inefficient carries in between the tackles, stuff like that. I think Tajay Spears is going to be really good on his opportunities. I just think that Tony Pollard is going to out-touch him, out-opportunity him enough that it'll be Pollard ahead of him.
Yeah. This is why we bring different people on the show, because otherwise I was just going to rant about Tajay Spears for 30 minutes and then end the show. I think there's definitely a case that Tony Pollard out-touches Tajay Spears. I think that the inefficiency versus the efficiency is going to be the difference that puts Tajay Spears over the edge. But it's going to be frustrating knowing which week to start each of them. And then you take the OC from Cincinnati, you make him the head coach there. They were always a 60-40 passing team, a 65-35 passing team. And now you already have a low touch amount going to the running backs. Now you split that almost evenly. God, it's gonna be frustrating week after week trying to figure out who to start or if either is even remotely worth it. So cool. And last but not least, on the Tennessee Titans, is Chigakonkwo worth anything in Dynasty?
By anything, you mean a late third?
If I offered you the 309 this year, would you give me Chigakonkwo?
Yeah, heartbeat.
If I offered you the 401,
sure.
If I offered you the 406,
probably not.
But Braylon Allen's on the board, and I know you love him.
That's your heartthrob, Mike. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. But all right, cool. Now they bring in all these weapons. Now we got to see what's going on. Also, going back to the Cincinnati roots, how often did Cincinnati ever target their tight ends? Was that a Joe Burrow thing? Was that a Brian Callahan thing? Who knows? I guess we'll find out this year. Anything else that you guys would like to talk about for fantasy football for those teams, or let's talk a little bit about betting lines?
Let's talk betting.
Sweet. All right. Houston Texans last year, they were 10-7. Their current betting line is at 9.5 with over at juiced minus money. Evan, over, under, or stay away from the line?
I mean, I would tentatively say stay away because I think this division is going to beat up on each other a little bit more, especially those top 3 teams than they have in previous years. But if I had to lean away, it's leaning to the over.
Okay. Wyatt, what about you?
Over pretty easy for me. I think they're the cream of the crop of the division, personally. I think the defense is going to be even better this year. And if CJ Stroud does take that next step like we're expecting him to, I think this team could be really good. And CJ Stroud wins games. Like he finds a way. He's one of the people in the 1-score games, he's going to find a way to get it done. As a rookie, he was doing that. I mean, I'm a Browns fan. When we were entering the playoffs, as it was getting to be time, I was like, please, not the Texans. I just did not want to play the Texans because I did not want to play against CJ Stroud because he just finds a way.
Yep. Yeah, I'll also say tentatively over. I think 9.5 is that's a high and a good line. But if CJ Stroud takes even a quarter of a step forward, we're looking at just a new beast of the team. And I would just feel silly taking the under with CJ Stroud at the helm. Jacksonville Jaguars, last year they were 9-8. Now they are set at 8.5. Evan, over, under, stay away.
I mean, once again, I'm going to say stay away with a slight lean to the under.
Okay.
I think they're an 8-win team.
Okay. Wyatt, what about you?
I'm pretty close to the same. I think I could be swayed either direction on where to lean. I think it's a very efficient line for the Jaguars. I think they're an okay team with a above average head coach who puts them in above average situations. Yeah. and Trevor Lawrence is just above average. So it's if the ball just bounces a few wrong ways for them, they could easily be a under 500 team. If they go the right way, they could be over. So I think it's a perfect line.
I can't wait for it to be week 9 and every talking head on ESPN is oh, what did they do signing Trevor Lawrence to this huge deal? What a mistake. Did the Jacksonville Jaguars mess up? Find out more after the break. I think they're going to be under. Vegas knows what they're doing, and most people are going to bet the over because they're oh, they won 9 games last year. Trevor Lawrence is good at football. I'm taking the over. So I will take the under. Indianapolis Colts, losing their starting quarterback, went 9-8 last year. They get Anthony Richardson back with a full year to learn how to play football. Now they're set at 8.5. Evan, over, under, stay away.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over on this one. I very much believe in the Colts. I already have a bet in for them to make the playoffs because I was able to get that plus money. So pretty happy with that already. I feel good about this team. Shane Steichen, I continue to reiterate on this. I think he is a top 5 head coach in the league. I think he is a top 3 offensive mind in the league. I think he could be right up there with Andy Reid when everything's all said and done. I think he is a masterful play caller, and I think he's going to put this offense in a great position to be able to win games.
Okay. Wyatt, over, under, stay away, 8.5.
I'm going to echo a lot of what Evan just said there, and it is really on the back of Shane Steichen being just an incredible head coach. You look at what he did with Gardner Minshew last year. He got them to a winning record with Gardner Minshew. I think that he can get them to a winning record with Anthony Richardson. Even if Anthony Richardson isn't quite there as a passer, he can help the chains move just with his legs and get them in scoring position often. Steichen will put him in the best position. I would definitely lean over.
The way that I look at this, let's say worst case scenario, Anthony Richardson gets hurt. Look who's waiting in the wings. Joe freaking Flacco. I'm taking the over pretty comfortably. I think this roster is young and ascending as opposed to old and crusty. So if you can give me a team that is on the rise that has already beaten this line, that's a pretty easy bet for me to make. So I will take the over. It's also the least juiced over of all of them at -105 as opposed to -110 and -140. So I think we're all in on the Colts, which means they're going to win 4 games. Tennessee Titans, last year, they were 6-11, which was a horrifying season to watch. Their current betting line is at minus 6.5. It's minus 135 odds. Evan, are you able to be unbiased here?
The unbiased me is saying stay the heck away from this. Nobody has any clue what's going to happen with this team this year. They could be horrendous and have a 3-win season, or they could be significantly better. Everything could gel on offense. Will Levis could actually be what Titans fans are hoping that he is. And the defense could play 20th ranked defense type of football, 20th. Which would be a decent season for that.
Yeah. The Titans line is the Will Levis mystery box. If he is good, they smash the 6.5. If you told me Will Levis threw for 4,500 yards and they were a 12-win team, I'd be like, okay, sweet. If you told me that Will Levis threw 25 interceptions and got benched week 11 because he threw that many by week 10, I'd be like, okay, that also makes sense. So I'm going to stay away from this line because I'm super confused. Wyatt, please provide clarity.
If I had to lean one way, it would be the under.
Okay.
I do think this team could be a lot of fun, could be great for fantasy. I think they could score a ton of fantasy points and be like a bad team. Just like in those like 30 to 35 shootouts where they just keep losing those games because like there are a lot of holes on the roster. And we just hope that offense shows some improvement. And honestly, like the Titans are probably fine with that type of season too. Like if the Titans just saw like offensive growth and growth from Will Levis, the wins and losses are kind of like we know this is a bad team, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they could be really bad and still be okay for fantasy, but I would lean the under if I had to.
Yeah. You can even just see it in the way that they made their offseason moves. They just put all of the chips in on offense, and then defense, they were like, well,
which was the right thing to do.
Jeffrey Simmons got an extension, didn't he?
Evan? I don't think Simmons got an extension.
Uh-oh. Well, he's leaving.
No, I mean, he's fine. He's there. He's the franchise defensive player.
Yeah. But speaking of leaving, we're about to leave. Wyatt, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you being here. Tell the tens of listeners at home where to find you.
Appreciate y'all having me on. It was a lot of fun. You can find me at YB_FF. And if you want to follow my content, subscribe to jwbfantasyfootball.com. And then also I have a weekly series that I write for Dynasty League Football with a buy, sell, hold article that rotates the position that I talk about. So you can check that out too. But that's behind a paywall, so I understand if you don't.
Very cool. If you want to send us a link to one of those, maybe we'll tuck it in the episode description on Spotify later. Cool. Evan, you got anything you want to say to the people at home?
Have a great night, everybody.